Hello. So thank you all for coming. I'm Dan here. Hello. So I'm going to be talking about a Abridged history of malware. It's abridged because I've got 74 years to cover and about 15 minutes to do it in. First, hi, I'm Liv. I'm a uni student at University of York. My other hobbies include falling off climbing walls and falling over in roller skates. But enough about me. Why are you here? Well, hopefully you're here to hear what I have to say. But I'm not talking about news. I'm talking about very, very old in some cases. This is not modern developments or anything, but I think it's why study any history? And it's because we can't really know where we're going if we don't know where we've been. Cybersecurity is so focused on new things, new threat actors, new malware, new vulnerabilities. But I think that it does this, we all sometimes need to sit down and be well, how did we get here? And in our case, our journey starts in the 40s. The popular Mechanics magazine has just predicted that computers in the future may weigh no more than 1.5 tons. What a world. 49 to be precise. John von Neumann of von Neumann architecture fame has just given a series of lectures at the University of Illinois, what he calls a self-reproducing automata. Not just a machine that can make a thing. Those are easy. Machines can make small things all the time. But he means a machine that can make a copy of itself of equal or possibly even greater complexity. Almost like the evolution of an actual animal. Surely no consequences will come of this one. And they don't, actually, in the 50s. Now all happens then. Bloke called Allen invents the Turing test. We go straight on to the 60s. 66 to be exact. Von Neumann's paper, about a decade after his death and just under 2 after his lectures, has been published. It's available to read online. Fascinating read. Would highly recommend. No one's putting this into practice yet. Until now, things are all starting to tick off in the 70s. Sci-fi's made up 2 new words, as sci-fi loves doing. Computer viruses that featured in David Gerrold's 1972 book when Harley was 1, and worms that featured in Brunner's 75 book, The Shockwave Rider. Not necessarily the first times these terms are used, but definitely one of the widely published ones. We don't have an umbrella term yet for all this, mal software, but I'm sure one's coming soon. We start in 71, actually. The Creeper, the first worm created by Bob Thomas. Well, it will be the first worm in 1972 when Ray Tomlinson updates it. And so instead of just moving itself around ARPANET, it can move copies of itself. All it really does is display the message, I'm the Creeper, catch me if you can. It doesn't do much other than that. It's just to prove the concept. Next year, we'll also see Ray Tomlinson make Reaper, which is the first anti-worm software, which is specifically designed to do what Reaper does, but then scrub it from the system in a thrilling game of worm and worm. In 74, we see an animal in its natural habitat. Animal. It's 20 questions game. This is what animal you're thinking of. It can kind of learn from itself, and also like the Eliza chatbot of the late 60s before it, it can almost randomize what it's saying to give a slightly natural communication. It also copies itself into every directory in your computer. It's told a few things. The first Trojan, quite frequently, or in the words of its creator, a neat idea. Trojan horse, it's been around since about, Homer publishes Iliad, 8th century BCE, but it was first used to talk about malware in about the 1972 Anderson report, credited to a computer scientist by DJ Edwards. This is not the first time computer scientists will make up words. Because a computer scientist has just made up a word. Fred Cohen has invented the word viruses. He was not the first to get there. Sorry, Fred. But, he's defined it academically as a program that, infects other programs to modify it and include a copy of itself. We still don't have any sort of umbrella term yet, but we are going to need one. The AIDS virus, Trojan, actually, comes out this decade. The first ransomware, although we don't have that word yet either. We'll go straight to 1988, actually. October and December is the Cascade virus. If you're on your computer, all your text is a Cascade down the screen. These screenshots actually are from the YouTube channel of a guy called Dan.1 who just infects VMs with various viruses. Great guy. If you're a fan of the Brain virus, the first IBM PC compatible virus, which was released 2 years ago, 86, you may notice I missed it out. That's because it doesn't cause all the text to cascade down your screen, and I think if the Olivia brothers wanted to be included in this presentation, they should have thought of that. Speaking of IBM, Cascade was coded specifically not to infect any IBM machines. Possibly not the first one to do it, but definitely the one I know about, which is quite interesting. The problem is every known variant of Cascade can infect IBM machines. They didn't quite get that one right. 88 though, that's 2 slides because it's also Morris worm time. One of the first malware to really get widespread media attention, and also got a conviction for Mr. Morris under the USA 86 Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Tough luck, mate. It's often said that about a tenth of the internet was infected, about 6,000 of 60 major Unix machines. Morris's colleague, Paul Graham, on his personal blog, reckons that he was there when this number was made up. It just kind of plucked it as a reasonable best guess. Also, actually, in the same footnote, even, he talked about, well, the way they dealt with the Morris worm was just turning things off and on again and like rebooting them, which is great to get rid of the Morris worm. It's less good to have an accurate number of how many machines are infected. But, oh well. 90s though, huge news for fans of things sorting into categories. Yisrael Wadai has just invented the word malware. Thank God, because I was getting fed up of not having it. Not only that, Yun and Yun have created the term cryptoviral attacks, which is not very catchy, but it will one day mean ransomware. And someone on Usenet has made up the term spyware. Specifically, they're talking about Microsoft hardware in this case, but very soon it will also refer to software. We don't need to keep calling things computer viruses now, even when they're not. Like, we will do that, but we don't have to. We'll start in 91 with the green caterpillar virus. It just makes a little green caterpillar go on your screen and eat your text, and it streets it out yellow and slides to the left. Green Caterpillar doesn't get its own Wikipedia page. It barely out SEOs like real-life viruses affecting real-life caterpillars. The reason I'm including it on here, despite being quite irrelevant, is that it's kind of the end of an era, not only because like MS-DOS is just kind of dying, but we've established that malware works now. Like, up until now, malware has been an annoyance. Yun and Yun, in their crypto viral attack paper, discusses how viruses are an annoyance. But from here on out, we're going to see viruses actually start to cause damage. Not yet though. It's the 99 worm. It's one of the first email attachment worms. It spends through emails, and attaches itself to everyone in your address list, and also hits them too. It also nicely displays fireworks and a little happy news message, which is nice. What's fun is that this one modifies registry keys for persistence. Like, if you think back to 88 with the Morris worm, that didn't have the same level of persistence. Like, you know, if you rebooted it, it was kind of fixed. Now, these things are sticking around for longer. Speaking of sticking around, we are. It's not Y2K didn't kill us. Good news, someone's just invented the first malware for macOS. It's called the Leap or the Oompa Loompa worm. Lots of people say that like macOS is kind of uniquely like, you know, protected against viruses and malware and stuff, and it kind of is. But mostly here, macOS and Apple has started to become relevant. Until this point, there weren't really enough users for anyone to bother actually making malware for it. 2000, we'll start with the I Love You worm. Another big worm that caused damage. Millions of people got hit with this one. It would delete random files, hide rather than delete MP3 files, funny enough, and also send itself to everyone in your address book. What's fun about the I Love You worm is that its creator, Nel de Guzman, he's Filipino, and at the time in the Philippines, there wasn't a law against creating malware. So he was kind of released with all charges dropped after, you know, taking out much of the globe with I Love You, because they didn't even get him on like criminal mischief, because they couldn't prove he'd intended to cause all of this damage. So fair play to him, actually. 2003, history is repeating itself. If you remember Reaper and Creeper from earlier, they're doing it again. The Blaster worm appears in August, and 5 days later, the Welcher worm will exploit the very same vulnerability to A, try and get rid of Blaster, and B, try and patch it up behind it. The extent to which this works is debatable. People have their opinions both ways, but like, people do love setting a worm to catch a worm. This is a very common theme, actually. As we move into the 10s, I notice, I don't know if the rest of you notice, but like, viruses are falling out of fashion. Like, I know the term is antivirus software. I know virus is kind of the catch-all term if you're not talking to a specifically technical audience, but I mean virus specifically like Cohen defined it in the 80s. I mean virus like the piece of self-reproducing code that attaches itself to another program that runs like that. Like, don't get me wrong, malware is bid as ever. Stuxnet 2010, once you start talking about Stuxnet, you start talking about cyber warfare, above my pay grade. Cobalt Strike, which is not technically malware, but it's very much, you know, it kind of is. I will mention Cobalt Strike one more because it does deserve a mention, but then we can just let it lie for a bit. Cobalt Strike. 2012 does have something else for it, though, thank God. The Shamoon virus. Turns out Saudi and Qatari oil companies, biggest hack in history. People throw around cyber warfare here too. This is the last of the big virus heavy hitters, because we just have better options now. If you want to cause damage, like, you don't need to rely on something that's by its nature quite small and requires user interaction to produce. You have other options to cause chaos. And with that, we're rapidly approaching the present day. The other week, actually, the Ink ransomware, it looks for unsecured printers on the network and actually prints out the ransom note, which is quite fun, and also a reminder to secure your printers, because everyone forgets about that one. I did skip over a fair few attacks. There was the Lottie ransomware, February 2016, which infected about 5,000 computers per hour at its peak, compared to 6,000 total for the Morris worm. There was the first upon Pegasus spyware, that was August 2016. There was a Krebs DDoS attack by Mirai, that was September 2016. And mainly it's a matter of time and scope. Scope? I named 3 things in 2016 just then. Compare that to 49 when we had 1 key thing in malware history. And time is just, I don't have time to talk about all of this. Once we start talking about some of these attacks, we start talking about geopolitics. And then you've got to the details to do it, give it justice. It's easy to talk about the motives behind Creeper, Can we do it? It's much, much harder to summarize, say, why a group that we think were Iranian were hacking products made by an Israeli company to target companies in the US. You have got an entirely new presentation at that point. That is far more detailed than I have time to go into. Very, very quickly, the malware world has gone very big and very complex. Hopefully not that quickly, because hopefully we'll be able to wend our way through 74 years of history to see how we've got here. As much as things keep changing, I guess there is always something that's the same as it ever was. Thank you. I appreciate you coming to listen. I have apparently 3 minutes for questions, if anyone has any.
Does anyone want to complain their favourite virus was missed out? Yeah, sorry, it was one at the front.
Honestly, I like Green Caterpillar. I like it because it doesn't do much. It seems to me very much like someone was like, hey, can I be slightly annoying and move everyone's text slightly to the left and make it yellow? And then they failed to cause any real damage or even get notability for it, but I can still respect that they put it out there and tried.
Any other questions? Cool. All right, well, thank you again.
Thank you.